Hello and welcome to another episode of Super Turbo 64, the podcast in which two friends get together to talk about video games. I'm Jason Vandervoort, and I am joined by Jeff Ross.
Hello.
All right, we have a special episode today. It's the first episode of a sub-series to the podcast that we are going to be calling How Did You Like?, where both Jeff and I will go into one specific game.
Yep.
It'll be one of those cases where Jeff and I, have both played said game in question.
Mm-hmm. And then hopefully something, finish the game or just put enough time into it that we feel comfortable just deep diving.
Yeah.
So there's going to be, spoilers in this one.
Yes. This is going to be, a very spoiler-heavy review, analysis. Yeah, whatever we want to call it. But as you probably saw, just based on either the title or the screenshot that you saw, based on where you saw this, we are going to be doing a deep dive into Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah. I just finished Ghost of Tsushima today.
Yeah, this very day, like just a couple of hours before we got together to record this.
Mm-hmm. Nothing like the last minute.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just, the last minute cramming session before you have a test, because this is actually going to be just me rigorously testing Jeff's knowledge about the game, minute trivia. Like, here, Jeff, what was the name of the monk?
Norio.
Good work.
I got one. Oh my god. See, the funny thing is, with Jason's preparation and note-taking and my having just completed it today, we're probably about the same level of remembering the game.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't have the greatest memory. That's the way it goes sometimes, but
that's what makes our preparation for it as to doing it today all the better.
Absolutely.
All right. So, I
gotta know. Shut up. Just shut up. What did you do to Uncle Shimura?
Oh, wow. You're just going right to that. Okay. I spared him.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What was your reasoning behind sparing him?
My reasoning is, the whole message and point of the game is Jin, not realizing that the samurai code actively held back Tsushima from, its invasion of the Mongols.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's in in Act 2-ish to 3, where Jin basically readily says, "No, I'm not a samurai anymore."
Yeah.
So when it comes down to that final struggle, I realized that it's just I'm Lord Shimura might, he still might be samurai, but Jin isn't anymore. So he's not bound to that same thing, that same credo. And so it's and also Jin lost so much throughout the course of that game. I figured, I wouldn't want to add another thing to his conscience. Even if Lord Shimura wanted that to happen, I don't know. It's funny you mention it, because when that decision happened, it's one of the only decisions you make throughout the course of Tsushima.
Yeah.
And
it's the only time you really make a choice other than naming your horse.
Right. Another gut-wrenching decision that we'll be digging into. But yeah, and it's one of those decisions where, I set down my controller, paused the game, and I had to think about it for a good few minutes, and the last time I had to do something like that in a game, probably would have been something I don't know, either Witcher or Life is Strange or the Mass Effect games. Plenty of games, say that they give you choice.
Yeah.
But it's been very few times where I've had that difficult of a choice put ahead of me. So
I think both options were the right choice. It's hard to pick.
Exactly.
And honestly, it does fit more with the theme of the game that Jin is breaking from the honor system of the samurai, like you said.
Yeah.
And sparing Shimura just seems to fit
thematically.
Yeah. And yet
and
yet I followed my gut, and my gut instantly said, give him what he wants. The honorable death is what Shimura was looking for in life. You know,
absolutely.
And I thought about it for 2 seconds.
Really?
It's just like, it just seemed it was also like, it felt like the more tragic ending, I guess, which is obvious, but it sparing him doesn't cap it off the same way that like the total loss of Jin's former life does. It's like, it seems like a harsher ending for sure.
It is, yeah. Though so I don't really think it doesn't really have too much of a bearing on what happens in post game, at least not that I'm fully aware of. Because like I think it, so like it's like we said, Jeff beat this earlier today, whereas I beat Tsushima a few weeks to a month ago now, at the time of this recording. And so the details of that are a little bit fuzzy to me, but like I don't recall there ever being this thing said that it's just like, that Lord Shimura is just going to keep coming after you or something like that. I think it just seems more just like this kind of personal choice.
Absolutely. And it's like, I don't know, I felt like not killing him would have shamed Shimura to the core, and he just,
I know. Yeah.
He just would be a broken man, and the Shogun would end up, abandoning him, right. or exiling him or punishing him more or whatever. Right. And the fact, like, that he took that major slash, who knows, like, if he would have, I assume he would survive because it says let him live in the options, exactly. But, in a real life situation, you just cut somebody through with a sword, like, he's probably not going to make it.
Right, but it's movie logic.
Yeah, right. So, that's all we have for you. Goodbye, no.
Yeah, well, it was a really great review. But yeah, so let's just let's rewind. I'm glad you asked that. I know it was going to be a big discussion point anyway.
Yeah, it was definitely the forefront of my mind.
Oh, well, yeah, because it just happened to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so let's go back. So just for just a tiny bit of background, I mean, most people who would be listening to this already have a pretty good idea of what Ghost of Tsushima is, but it's just like, it's like, it's for my money and like my memory, it's probably the closest and coolest representation of samurais like in game that I've ever come across. And it's just one of those instances where it's like, once we found out that there was, an open world samurai game coming out, that so many people were just like, why hasn't this been a thing that has, just been done a whole bunch of times already?
Sure. It wasn't, in fact, I didn't even really know it was open world until it came out. I saw the first trailer. I knew that, and I suppose that there was going to be, I knew that there was like traveling from mission to mission and stuff, but it was one of those games where before it came out, I'm like, I already know I want to play this. I'm not going to actually research it or watch a bunch of trailers and stuff, keep the hype at a manageable level.
Yes.
Keep yourself from spoilers and whatnot. Right.
I feel like for both you and I, definitely when we were younger, we had this tendency to just really, really go deep into learning about a game before it came out.
Yeah.
And so like the hype for it would be just elevated to unmanageable levels.
Yeah.
I mean, we made a
we had a countdown calendar for Mortal Kombat 9.
Yeah, for Mortal Kombat 9, we made a specific calendar to count down the days till Mortal Kombat 9. We were that hyped about it. I think we even did one similar to that for the first Injustice. And And yeah, there were just other games that, we were just like so hyped about, wanted to learn stuff
Yeah.
about all the time. But definitely, in the last few years, I've tried to really rein that in,
Mm-hmm.
especially for games that I'm excited about. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get too off topic, but like, good example is Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
I've really kept a distance from watching stuff about Cyberpunk
Yeah.
because I want to keep it as fresh in my mind as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we both did the same thing
Yeah.
for Tsushima.
And I'm doing that for Cyberpunk also. And
Right.
I just saw a trailer for that today that the top comment said, spoiler at 3:30 or whatever. And
Sure.
so I watched like a minute of it,
Yeah.
And but what were you going to say about Tsushima?
I think I feel like I knew it was open world fairly early on,
Mm-hmm.
largely because the developer that makes it, Sucker
Oh,
Punch,
sure.
that made the Infamous games,
Mhm.
they've been making really good open world games for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured that, Tsushima was going to be the same way. And I did watch some bits and pieces about it,
Sure.
just because, I was really excited about
Yeah.
the premise of it.
The premise of the game is fantastic, right? It's so
really-
hard to top.
It really is, yeah. Like and it has definitely one of the best starts.
Mm-hmm.
Like it starts with Jin and Shimura like on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
They are ready to repel the Mongol invasion just right there.
Yeah.
It's just like, this will be fun. Like we'll take care of this right now, and the Emperor is going to be so happy with us. And they just get like
Just devastated.
slaughtered.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jin, is presumed dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then wakes up in this small little village, and he's been nursed back to health by a thief named Yuna. And like, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but Yuna and Jin's dynamic throughout the course of the game is probably one of my favorite aspects about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, right away, right out of the gate, Jin is just like, all right, I need to go, I need to reunite with Uncle Shimura and rebuild our forces and take care of the Mongols.
Yep.
And Yuna, just right away, is just like, that's dumb.
Yeah.
That's what you did right away.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you guys were all at peak health, you had the numbers, and you lost.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you think that doing the same exact thing,
Right.
will yield any different results? But like at the beginning of the game, Jin is just so focused and bound by by the samurai code
Yeah.
that has been like his whole life.
Right. It's his mission at that point. He has no choice but
Yeah.
to go and attempt to rescue Lord Shimmer.
Exactly. And at the very beginning, he does it in an extremely foolhardy way.
Yep.
Like, he storms that fortress basically on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that small boss fight against Khotan
Yeah.
Khan. And you get your butt kicked,
Mm-hmm.
and presumed dead again for the second time
Yeah.
in probably about an hour. And then it's just like, maybe it was the severe head trauma of being kicked off that bridge, but then Jin is like, I must be doing something wrong.
That's, yeah. If it doesn't work the first time, the second time,
Yeah,
maybe you rethink your strategy.
maybe a little bit.
It's that trope of fighting a boss early on and losing, and then coming back and later on. How do you feel about that? Do you like losing the first match? It usually seems to go well, but I always wonder in the back of my head, like, what if I actually won that fight?
Yeah, it really depends on the game. I'm okay with unwinnable fights.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the best time that I see it, I've actually seen unwinnable fights done really well in the Trails of Cold Steel games.
Yeah.
Like, what will happen is, right before the fight starts, you get a prompt at the beginning, and it says, your objective is to get your enemy to, like, 70% health.
Okay.
And the boss fight is extremely difficult,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're smart, you can reach to that 70%.
Yeah.
and then it cuts to a cutscene.
Mm-hmm.
So like the player gets that satisfaction of kind of winning the fight, but then the story continues.
Yeah.
And I feel like that really accurately is able to articulate just how much more powerful this boss character is than you.
Yeah.
And I mean, Cold Steel has done that pretty much since that arc started, because you will encounter characters that are far above you, you know, but then as the games go on, like, you're able to get closer and closer, going toe to toe with them. And so, like, I feel like Tsushima did it really well, even without having that system in place, because it was a challenging and fun fight that was also just dramatic as hell.
It was.
You know, and it is nice, you know, when you have something like that where you are able to see your tangible progress. And I feel like Tsushima is unique in how it does it, because your progress as a character is linked to the story more than most any other open world game that I've ever played. But what do you think? Like, how do you enjoy those kind of unwinnable boss fights?
Oh, it was kind of interesting because I played the beginning of Sekiro, another samurai game that came out in the last 2 years or a year or whatever. It has the same thing going on, where you fight a boss early on and you lose the fight and you end up you restart your journey basically. And I'm like, so it feels like a little bit of a trope, you know, which is, I mean, tropes aren't necessarily a bad thing, and it's just that I didn't mind it too much, but it certainly makes it more satisfying at the end of the game when you're like, I remember when you beat me, but it's my turn now.
And we're going to be jumping back and forth so much through this. It's definitely really satisfying where in the first time you fight Khoten Khan, your fight is pretty straightforward and he beats you. And then the second time you fight him at the end of the game, he is just such a little fucking weasel. Like,
he's desperate. And, you know,
the fight goes through like 2 or 3 stages, and each time he becomes more and more desperate and starts to throw more and more people at you. Like the first time, he basically treats the fight the same way as he did at the very beginning of the game. You know, where it's just like, haven't we already done this before?
Yeah. Right.
But then, like, as you're kicking his butt, like, that's another cool thing, is like having a boss fight that is able to showcase character more. You know, like, it feels like telling a really gripping and satisfying storyline through a boss fight is super difficult, but it's really rewarding. You know, because I think most people, when they're playing an action game, they want a certain amount of catharsis in the final boss fight. But not every boss, like, final game villain can offer that. Like, I don't want to go into spoilers for another game, but we'll just say one of the Arkham games, you know, has a villain where you're like, they do this weird thing so that you can have a final boss fight with them, but it feels weird. You know? Whereas everything about the boss fight and the way it bookends the game with Khoten Khan feels really good.
It's like, you just, exactly, it feels good. I love my boss fight with him ended with him cornered in between some crates on his ship, and I had turned on the fire blade thing, and I'm just wailing away, and he just was I'm saying devastated again. He was destroyed, you know. So it was nice to have that catharsis, as you put it, just that nice moment of you really do feel like you win, you beat the game. That's story games don't always give that feeling, but and
Tsushima
this
did very well.
Tsushima pulled it off.
Right. To go back to your first time fighting Khoten Khan, you know, you my memory is a little bit foggy about it, but then, you know, you wake up again, and Yuna is basically like, you idiot,
you survived though.
What did I just tell you?
Right.
And it gives Jin this first impression, like just like the first crack in his resolve, that maybe the way I've been doing things isn't working.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a in storytelling, most characters have what's called like a lie the character believes. You know, and that's this thing that the character is carrying with them throughout the story, and it's the thing that is preventing them from becoming a more like fully fledged person.
Yeah.
And so for Jin, that lie that he believes is that he can beat Khotun Khan with
using
like
the samurai code,
by using the samurai code. Whereas but Yuna, just based on who she is, how she's lived her life, and how she's seen like the other side of the like the samurai code, like she is the first person to demonstrate to Jin that it might not work. You know, and it's just like the first time that, you know, like your first stealth mission,
Yeah.
you know, where
There are hostages.
Yeah.
And you have, you know, she just straight up tells you if they see you, they're going to kill the hostage.
Yeah.
And you end up having to stealth assassinate these people instead, you know.
Yeah.
And I like that right after that, or the first time that you use the assassination on your own, you get this little cutscene.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so cool for a game to do that. Just have this flashback triggered by a choice that you made gameplay-wise.
Yep. Exactly. Like he struggles with it.
Yeah.
You know, like you get to see the guard like flail and struggle against it.
Right.
You know, and it just makes the that whole thing unsettling. Because like as the player you find it unsettling because you get to watch this like a struggle that most games that have like a stealth mechanic, you can sneak up behind someone, dispatch them, and it's just like mindless.
Right.
But that first time you do it in Tsushima, it is like it sticks with you.
Right.
You know? And then later on, because throughout the game, you get these cutaways to Khotun Khan talking to Lord Shimura. And he's basically like just trying to get into his head. And he's like, you know, they're finding my men with wounds in their back.
Yeah.
And Lord Shimura's like, no,
Yeah.
that's impossible. That's my incredibly good and accurate impersonation of Lord Shimura. And it's just, yeah, it's really cool. And like throughout the rest of that mission, Jin is just like, what the hell did I just do?
Right.
Like he feels that he just got started on a path that he never thought he could go down.
Yeah, you know, early on, it was interesting to me. Like, did you ever get the feeling throughout the game that you were going to have to make a choice at the end of the game?
Yes, absolutely.
I got that feeling too, and I was like, if they ask me to surrender or to like continue and be, you know, the ghost or whatever, as it turns out to be, I'm going to choose to surrender. You know, I'm going to pick the side of honor, basically.
Yeah, right.
And like what I'm realizing I'm doing is I'm sacrificing my own self and code in order to save the island. But as the game goes on, it's not so black and white anymore, you know.
And I am really glad that Sucker Punch did that. You know, I like you were saying, I think we both expected a choice on that because it's kind of it's almost like another trope that we've kind of come to expect from games, you know, where you are kind of presented with like some sort of ethical or moral dilemma. We kind of expect like later on down the line for us to have to make a choice about it. And so for that choice to be kind of taken away from us, and for Jin to actually have a set character progression is really cool, because it's like, it's another thing, because in Sucker Punch's previous games, there was choice mechanics.
Sure.
You know, where that put you towards like, am I going to be a good superhero or a bad superhero?
Yeah.
Like the difference between being Spider-Man and the Punisher, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's just another one of the preconceptions that I had going into it. You know, that maybe being more like a samurai would do this, being more like the ghost would do this.
Yeah.
And again, I'm really glad they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is exceedingly rare, I find, for an open world game, like an open world action adventure game, to tell like a story where the main character actually has a character arc.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these games, like your character arc and your character progression is just filling up your skill tree, you know?
Right.
Whereas this is just like Jin is going through a big change, and the game shows you that throughout the entire time, like how frequently he is struggling with it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. You don't like. For example, when they introduced poison into the game, like I was sort of like I felt like the reins were out of my hands for a second. Like I'm like, no, Jin, you're going too far. Poison is too much,
Yeah.
But he is like dead certain in that. And he asks his caretaker for poison recipes, and
Yep.
he ends up. I'm glad that they had him use the poison in a cutscene.
Yes.
Because I didn't use it for a long time.
Yeah, neither did I.
After it was granted to the player, but when I did, and it sounds like I'm. Well, I'll just say it. It was an accident. I accidentally pulled out the pipe, and I'm like, why is my bow taking this long to fire? And then I just shoot some guy, and he's like, "Whoa, whoa." And then it triggers a cutscene of Jin being like, oh, God, no, what have I done? And Shimura is telling him, like, don't ever be a bad boy, son, and
Jeff and I have very different interpretations of the character.
yeah, right. When Uncle Shimura is telling you that, and then Jin is like, this is just until the war is done.
Yeah.
Then I'll go back to being a normal samurai man.
Exactly. Views it as a means to an end.
Right.
Yeah. No. And I love how by the time Jin sees his caretaker for the first time since the game begins, and like he asks her about it, that she's not super into the idea.
No, for sure.
But she realizes the gravity of the situation that they're all in.
Yep.
But she also still realizes, just like, yeah, Jin, this wasn't the person that you were.
Right.
And it's another thing where, like you were saying, where you were kind of feeling the reins taken away from you. I'm glad because, by Jin as the character going that route, getting the poison, it makes the whole thing where that is turned against him all the better.
Absolutely.
Like when you go into the third act and
the Mongols are starting to use poison
they are experimenting with it. Like they're trying to figure out his formula. And so you find that village that is basically just annihilated by the whole...
devastated is the word of the day.
Okay, devastated, yeah. And so Jin has to grapple with the fact that choice that he made has led to this. And even before then, when Jin, like, the culmination of the second act, where Jin and Lord Shimura, they're going to take that castle, like his Lord Shimura's castle, and Jin realizes that Lord Shimura is basically walking into a trap. Basically the same kind of traps that Jin has walked in twice since the game began.
Right.
And Jin is like, no, you are putting so many people at risk by doing this. I have a different way that we can do this.
Yeah.
And where all of the deaths are just going to be the Mongols. But Lord Shimura, like, he's against it. And you really get to see that schism just at its breaking point right then. And so then Jin goes in, does the poison anyway, and you get just another scene where it's just like
that's
it's unsettling.
Oh, right, with the dying Mongols.
Yeah.
But afterward, when Shimura comes in, he sees like a struggling Mongol, finishes him off, and Shimmer ends up talking to Jin, and he's like, "What have you done?
Right.
You were supposed to be my son, mate."
Yeah.
And like him burning the adoption papers, that was powerful.
It was super, like the whole
Yeah.
scene, was just so powerful. Yeah. All right. And so, just going back, because I want to try and go as like comprehensive throughout the game
sure.
as we can. Like, after Jin like first starts kind of going on, basically when the control of the game is largely given to you, to explore and whatnot. And, you start to explore and start to kind of develop, your own play style. And you start to explore and whatnot. That's when you kind of gain access to the game's side quests. And, open world side quests are usually pretty forgettable.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are definitely, fetch quests and, stuff like that in Tsushima. But one of the things that they did that I found to be super cool is they gave lengthy quest lines to each of like the 3 kind of main generals that Jin gets. So I didn't finish all of them, but I got a good chunk of the way through them. And so like each of them, like Lady Moscow and Sensei Ishikawa, and the third person whose name I'm currently forgetting.
Well, there was Nurio,
the monk. Yep.
And there was NG, the sake salesman.
Okay. Yep.
And then Yuna's missions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like with both, like with Sensei Ishikawa and Lady Masako, you've got this thing where it's like with Ishikawa, he is dealing with the thing of his pupil that has like turned against him, and like she's working for the Mongols and teaching them how to be better archers. So like he's grappling with the decisions that he's made.
Yeah, there is some reflection there between what Jin is doing and the sensei.
Exactly. So, you understand more fully why he's joining you instead of Shimura. And you get the same thing with Lady Moscow, in which like she is a lady that is just like, she is consumed by revenge.
Yeah, and that's another, I suppose they have a reflection too, where, Jin has lost everything by the end of the game, and but at most everything before the game really kicks off. But Masako, I'm curious, so which of the character side quests did you end up going through, and which ones did you
I didn't finish any of them, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
I got the farthest into Sensei Ishikawa's.
Okay. Well, I can
go ahead.
I mean, it is a spoiler cast.
Yep,
right?
go for it. Yeah, I know. This will help me learn more too.
Yeah, absolutely. I ended up playing through all the side quests.
Nice.
Of the characters, and I think there's a few more that I have to like find in the game.
Okay.
For like the plain side quests.
Sure.
And for the character side quests, I thought they were excellent.
Yeah.
But especially Sensei Ishikawa.
Yeah.
His was probably the best arc, and I thought there's a lot of questions about with Sensei would say like, what are we going to do when we find her, Jin? And Jin would say, you'd have the choice to be like, she must pay for her crimes, or she should try to join us as a skilled archer.
Okay.
I would always say she must pay for her crimes, because like she was using like living human targets as target practice.
She was pretty depraved. And
Yeah.
you find that out very early, that she is up to some really shady shit.
And so then you run into her for the first time, and she tells you like Ishikawa is going to betray you, and she like fakes her own death for a second there, and she by like jumping off a cliff, and you look over the cliff like a cartoon character, and you see nothing there. But what I thought it was kind of like, as cool as these side quests were, and maybe Yuna had the most satisfying ending.
Okay.
But the ending part was probably the worst part for all of like Norio's and Moscow's and Ishikawa's, because
just the conclusion of them.
Yeah, like
okay.
because Tomoe, she ends up having like a complete reversal of character at the end of the quest line.
Who does?
Tomoe,
the evil archer?
yeah.
Okay.
And she, you end up finding her and talking to her, and she's like, when you find her for the first time, she's pretending to be a peasant, and you're talking to her, and like the whole time you're like, this is obviously her. As the player, you're thinking that, and then at the end of the mission, she says something about how she does what she has to do to survive, and Jin is like, don't we all, Tomoe? And and Tomoe's like, so you knew. I apparently underestimated you, and whatever. But what ends up happening is that she says, I was forced to be a fucking war criminal by the Mongols. She didn't want. She was surviving, so she was. Like, she was ending the lives of these poor people that, she tortured to death by shooting them, basically. She's like, rather than them suffering in a Mongol prison camp, they were killed instantly by her arrows or whatever. And there's a character at one point that was just burned to death by the Mongols. She's like, that wasn't me. That was one of the Mongols. They killed her, So she gives all sorts of excuses, like, I swear I'm not going to apologize for surviving because I just needed to do what I did to, live my life, get out of prison, basically. And she ends up escaping after a short battle that Ishikawa and Jin Tomoe have against the Mongols, because she shows them, like, the Mongol archers that I trained are about to ambush Umugi Cove, I think it is called. And she says that we can stop them before they conquer the town. So after you kill those archers, Ishikawa and you are there like, oh, where's Tomoe? And you trace her. I thought that was ridiculous how often you would follow footsteps in the game. There's just tracks everywhere. You were Detective Jin Sakai, and you were always like, warm coals. They haven't been gone long, But anyway, you track her to it turns out she was also using this battle as a means to get to a boat to get to the mainland.
Sure.
And I thought it was pretty cool when Ishikawa decides not to kill her as he sees her boating away, and she's just standing there. She left a note for them on the seashore that she's like, you'll never hear from me again and all that business. But I just like that reversal. I thought if she were more of a villain character, it would have made more sense, I guess.
Sure.
But it was pretty decent. I promise that my descriptions of what happens in the end of these side quests will be a little more brief for the rest of these, but I did want to talk about each of the side quests a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you Masako's ending? It turns out that it was her sister that had faked her own death at the ambush early on, and the sister was the architect of this slaughter of the family, and you find out basically that in Masako's past, she had sent the sister away, even though the sister was the elder sister and was the one that was supposed to be married to a samurai or to the most noble person that they could, because Masako showed an aptitude for fighting, and she had once defended her her property against bandits. She caught the eye of a samurai that her sister was supposed to be married to, and so Masako ends up apparently she sent the other sister, she's like, why don't you marry this other person who's turns out to be like an abusive drunk, and she, the sister blames Lady Moscow for her life being terrible.
Okay.
I thought it was cartoonishly villainous that she would end up like slaughtering her own grandnieces and nephews
For that reason.
Yeah, like, you married the one I wanted to marry, and now I have to deal with this abusive husband for 40 years. Yeah. I'm happy that your husband died, and I'm happy that everyone you love is dead.
Right.
And,
yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for a game that, frequently tackles ambiguity quite well.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. That motivation doesn't really quite.
Yeah, it doesn't pay off very well, I thought.
I mean, it's one thing entirely if she, utilizes the Mongol invasion to kind of maybe enact like a smaller scale revenge.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little more believable. But yeah, like just the level of tragedy that Lady Moscow had to deal with. Yeah, that is punishment definitely does not fit the crime.
It was interesting because you were getting hints that it was somebody within her own family that did it. When how far did you see, like, when Moscow met with her servants or whatever?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, like, oh, the property all belongs to me. You were getting these kind of notes and stuff. My theory, and it was definitely unlikely because we saw him get burnt to death. I'm like, what if Mr. Masako survived somehow? Did he get beheaded also or something in that scene? I can't recall. But
yeah, I don't remember.
I thought it would be Lord Adachi. That's his name. If he was somehow like erasing his past life or something.
Sure.
But or if he was like a traitor somehow, and using the Mongols to, climb the social ladder or something. But
to just a mild shift, and is like that is one element that I really did enjoy throughout the course of the game, is like encountering the characters who tried to make the best of the situation of the Mongols being there. Like the sake dealer.
Yeah.
Kenji,
right.
You said?
Enji, I think his name is.
Yeah, like, he's such a shifty little bastard.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, definitely, is making the best of a very bad situation, And there's other characters like that, you know, throughout.
There's people, like, especially in the side quests, not the character ones, but, like, the one-offs. Like, there was a sculptor who was like, they're going to make me famous in the entire world versus just Japan. And then, there was, like, people that were selling to the Mongols and stuff like that. But what I noticed with the one-off side quests is that they tried to put a twist in 90% of them.
Sure.
And so it ended up getting to be predictable,
Right. It's like you're watching an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah,
and you're like,
exactly.
It's coming.
Yeah, So you meet someone who's supposed to be a good guy early on. I bet that they're responsible for something bad. Yeah.
No, I definitely get that. It's for my second time referencing the Trails series in this, there after a while there gets to be a certain set of tropes that like, so when I approach a scene or a portion in the game, I just start to think like, I really hope events don't happen
in this precise
in the
order,
exact fashion that I'm starting to see, happen a lot. And so that does get to be a little bit tiresome.
I'm trying to remember, like, most of the side quests that were one-offs were just not that memorable, unfortunately.
It's really hard to find like side quests that really are super engaging.
Yeah.
For my first time referencing the Yakuza games in this episode, because you can't go one without it, those side quests tend to be a little bit more memorable because oftentimes, like, whereas you typically will have a fairly serious tone for the main story, the side missions are almost universally, like, really silly.
Okay.
And so there's a disconnect and like they're often silly in a bunch of different ways, which make you kind of remember them a little bit better.
Yeah.
You know? But, you know, that not every game can utilize that. Like
Right.
that would
If they had just jokey, silly stuff in Tsushima, it just wouldn't fit.
yeah, would be wildly inconsistent, you know. So I'm really glad that didn't happen.
Right.
You know? But yeah, no, if you want to go back to some of the side character stuff.
No, yeah. So we had Norio, his story ended. I thought it turns out that his beloved brother, this was a decent twist, I thought. His beloved brother was still alive, actually, and being kept alive and tortured just ruthlessly by the Mongols. When you finally meet him, he's missing all 4 of his limbs.
Oof.
And he's just like he's a broken man, obviously, because he tells Nurio as soon as he sees him, he's like, I told them everything, you know, all the times that you were like a little surprised that the Mongols had an edge. Well, it was the brother, basically.
Sure.
And Nori was like, it's okay, you know, you obviously were under duress. But Norio ends up having to, you know, euthanize his brother.
Okay.
And but so for mission 9 of 9, Norio and you, this is just really interesting, I guess, is you're used to, with every side quest, like attacking a camp basically, and then, or, you know, so you set up before a camp, you even like spot what you're gonna do. I think maybe not in that one, but what matters is that while you're sleeping, Norio takes the camp and kills almost everyone by himself.
Wow.
And so when you wake up, you're like, oh, Norio's gone. And you go to the camp, and the whole thing is on fire. Even the civilians are like, there's a monk in there, and he's gone mad. He's insane. You know, he's like too violent that he's killing these Mongols like in a horrible way. And like, so you go in, and you see that he burnt the leader, Captain Mongol, to death. And he's like, Norio's like, admits, when he screamed, I felt a happiness I've never felt before, or something like that. And just
that's wild.
Yeah. So it's really strange. Like, it's a disconnect, because what he's like, he tells you, like, I can never go back to being just a normal monk again.
Right.
I can't go back to Cedar Temple. And when you see him then at the end of the game, Jin says, well, if it isn't the captain of Cedar Temple. And he's like, Norio's like, I can't accept that title. And Jin's like, then that's why you deserve it. You know, and so Norio...
It's like a scripting issue.
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
You know? Like, since I didn't complete that quest line, for me, that wouldn't, like, that disconnect wouldn't have been there for me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So Norio, you know, he did say he was going to be there for, like, all of the characters say, we will be there when you need us, you know.
Right. Yeah,
but,
we're working through our own shit, but when you need us, we will be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was cool.
Yeah.
That, and like that was a point I had forgot to mention, but like we had just briefly kind of gleamed on it, but like with when we were mentioning you know, how like side characters or side quest characters, you know, most of them kind of had this thing about how they were handling the Mongol invasion, you know, and like most open world games typically kind of have this formula in which it's like you usually end up taking some sort of stance as like a freedom fighter or something, you know, like at the start of the game, boom, this whole island, territory, whatever is under like heavy like invasion or whatnot. And so, you know, slowly and methodically liberating everything is another open world trope that we've become accustomed to.
Yeah, right.
But with Tsushima, I've not really encountered many other open world games that have kind of gone to the lengths of making the game feel occupied
Yeah.
by an opposing force. Like the side characters in Tsushima, it's like, yeah, like some of them are trying to make the most of this situation, like you said, by either trying to sell to the Mongols, you know, doing things to possibly make their own family like make use of the situation. Like most of the time in an open world game, like any side quest character, it's just like, well, you know, I can't do anything until you know, until you like, these guys took my farm.
Yeah.
I can't farm unless you kill them. So like most open world games, like every single side character is in a state of complete limbo until you liberate their piece of real estate, you know? But Tsushima, that's not so much the case. Like there's characters who are in situations and you get these gleams that they're making the most of this situation, but you can have an influence on it, you know, by getting them off this farm, you know, to use the farm analogy again. And
Jin
that's just,
Sakai, help me. Lord Sakai, my daughter has been kidnapped.
Exactly. And it's just, I don't know, it's a detail that just made the whole kind of open world convention feel a little bit more real to me.
Yeah. I was a little the mapping system I thought was interesting. Like the fact that you get a little bit more mapping.
Yep.
Whenever you save a hut or village or whatever.
Right.
A fort, not a hut. But like there was no climbing a giant tower to see the land around you.
I'm really glad they didn't do that.
There was barely any hunting, you know.
Exactly.
It was always funny to like, you see a bear fighting Mongols and you just kind of ride up and kill everyone involved.
Yeah, like every once in a while, you know, you'd go to a small camp or something and you'd see like a fur trapper or something like that, and he'd say, well, you know, I'll be able to upgrade this for you if you get me these bear skins or something.
Yeah.
And like I was just thinking to myself, like, I have not gone hunting a single time. Like if I've found a skin, it's just been like sheer dumb luck, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like you run into pigs or boars, or like you kill the Mongol dogs, and I'm not talking about the people, but the actual dogs,
the actual puppers.
Yeah, no. There were some tropes that they cut out that I was happy about.
Me too.
I thought it was funny that you were still picking flowers, you know, and like like most games it seems, but
there's still a lot of check boxes on the map that you can fill out.
Yeah, absolutely. Following foxes, you know, doing like I have a pet peeve that I might have mentioned on this podcast 10 times already, that I hate it when you have to platform in a non-platforming game, because it always feels tacked on. This one wasn't so bad, but you really, like, you didn't have a lot of impetus. You're watching Jin climb, basically.
Yeah, right.
And so the shrines were kind of iffy at best, you know.
I get that. Yeah, like, with previous Sucker Punch games, you know, you've been in a more traditional open world of it being like a city.
Yeah.
You know, so the climbing and jumping across rooftops and whatnot, the platforming felt a little bit more connected to the game. Whereas, like, I mean, yeah, I did definitely, like, those shrine things were fun. I can definitely see where you would kind of have that criticism of where it felt tacked on. I had similar gripes with, like, the stealth mechanic.
Yeah, I was, you know, a lot of open world games tack on, but it was a stealth mechanic.
Yeah.
But this one was definitely integral to the story.
That's the thing. Yeah, like, for a game that, you know, tackled, you know, whether you're a combat or stealth build, like, had it built into the storyline.
Yeah.
You know, where it was so crucial in that regard. The fact that the actual gameplay of the stealth felt very forgettable to me, that it made me a lot less likely to use stealth.
What do you think was it just didn't have anything cool to it that you didn't
It
like,
just
or...
wasn't memorable. You know,
Sure.
you had, like, you would crouch,
Mm-hmm.
hide in bushes,
Right.
stab folks in the back, throw the occasional sound makey thing,
Yeah.
and, like...
It had all your trappings of a typical stealth game, you know?
Yeah.
But it's still missing that X factor, I guess.
Exactly. Like, so, like, the combat in Tsushima...
Fantastic.
Exactly. It feels unique to Tsushima.
Mm-hmm.
You know? You can definitely see where it's learned from other, like, open world action-adventure games, but it maintains its own identity.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish that the stealth was able to do the same. What was fun, and so Teki and I, we got Tsushima at the same time, and you know, we started playing it at the same time. She hasn't beaten it yet, but like when her and I play a game, if there's an option for stealth, she will take it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so she utilized the stealth mechanics a lot more in the game than I did, and I do feel like that is also largely because I just found the combat
the combat was
fun,
so much cooler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how could I? So the only times that I feel like I used stealth was definitely, you know, when the main mission asked me to do it, but also if there were those rare occurrences where like enemy forces were so stacked up against me that I felt like I had to kind of like even the odds just a little bit.
And I started the game on hard, ended up pushing it down to normal pretty early on when I kept getting destroyed by Mongols. But on hard mode, it was definitely more important to use stealth, I think, than...
I believe that.
And now they have a lethal mode, which is, like, I don't think I'll even try that one, but, like... I actually do remember you telling me about like how you and Teki's pathways, or like she would do stealth and you would do like sword fighting. I thought that was pretty interesting that you even had the choice and stuff. This was before I played the game, and like, so I was curious how I would tackle it myself. I'm like, am I gonna copy Teki or Jason? No. And what I did is I mixed it up every time I went to a new place, and like. Whether like if I felt like wearing a samurai costume for a while, I'm like, okay, it's time to do standoffs, which were cool aspects.
Super fun.
Yeah. Although that training of playing the like draw game in Kirby Superstar finally paid off, you know.
This is my moment.
Yeah. And like I would just change my approach based on the bonus objective for the little forts or whatever.
Sure.
If it was like assassinate 3 people, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm gonna stealth this one, you know.
Gotcha.
And actually, it's funny to me that my biggest complaint about the game early on was that there was no ability to like just insta-click one thing to switch outfits.
Oh, yes.
You know, because like I would constantly like I love all the vanity options in the game.
Yeah.
And
super cool.
I'm like, man, I want to have a matching samurai outfit. So I have to like, I want it to be red this time, so I have to go to each outfit piece and make it red. Whatever. But it turns out there was an option all along in the options menu that you could have builds they would even let you assign charms to each of the builds, which I think should be turned on by default. But you know, too late for that. Whatever, not a big deal.
Say Levy. It might have been a thing that was patched in. Honestly, I don't remember.
Yeah, it was so handy to be able to switch quickly, but then I started to like switch too fast or too frequently that I'm like, I got to start role playing this a little bit now.
Exactly, it breaks your immersion like just the slightest bit.
So if I'm next to my horse, I'll switch costumes or something like that. You know,
kind of like in Red Dead, where like all of your stuff was like attached to your horse.
Exactly. So, poor Kage or Nobu was hauling around like several pieces of samurai armor. You know.
It's a living.
Yeah. Oh man, speaking of the naming of the horses,
Yes.
it was a very tricky thing for them to do. Is say this name will stick with your horse through the entire game.
Yes.
And then the horse dies at the beginning of Act 3.
Right. Yeah. You and I, we actually named our first horse the same thing. We both
Yeah.
named him Nobu, and like I enjoyed so much as my time with the game. Like you know, every time you'd whistle for him, get on like, "You're a good horse, Nobu," and I'd be like, "He really is. He's such a good boy." And but then you know, like in that second or at the beginning of the third act, you know, when Nobu gets shot, and you got that
too
scene
many
where he
times,
just
yeah.
like carries you, gets you to
As far
safety
as
as
he
close
can,
as he
yeah.
could, and then you bury him,
Mhm.
and like man, that
Yeah.
that hit, man. It hit me where I live.
You know, the thing about the death of the horse to me was like I thought that you know the Ryuzo's death and Shimura's you know taking away
Yep.
his ownership as father to
Yep.
you, both of those are more powerful to me than the horse dying,
Right.
and they happened like moments before.
Oh yeah, like just the going into the third act, it's just heavy
Yeah.
hit after hit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hi, Johan.
Yeah, my
Johan
cat
has been
Johan just
napping
woke
like
up.
the entire
Yeah.
time that we've been going through
So
this.
lucky because he has turned into a little monster
Exactly,
lately.
yeah. So like, the last time that we recorded would have been the first episode that we recorded when Jeff had Johan, and Johan at that time was just such a sleepy, purry little puffball, which he actually is right at this moment.
Good.
And but
Yeah.
he has since evolved into a
He's in possibly his terrible twos phase.
that's yeah.
Either that or it's angsty teenagehood.
Yep.
Because my legs, feet are bloody stubs now. Johan is a beast of fury. He is a wrecking ball.
Right now he is just sitting in my lap, purring up a storm.
That's great.
It's like I left my cell phone on vibrate. But
Oh.
so going back, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Ryuzo
Mm-hmm.
after the thing with the horse, because it's like we were talking a little while ago about how the side characters, usually in some way or another, kind of are a little bit of a reflection of what Jin is going through
Yeah.
for the story.
Mm-hmm.
No character symbolizes that better than Ryuzo,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like here's the guy who basically has been Jin's rival
Yeah.
for like as long as they can remember.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
He sells his ideals
Yeah.
to save his own people.
exactly.
Which is a smaller subset, the Straw Hat Ronin versus, Jin considers his people the people of the island. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. And like Ryuzo kind of has this resentment towards Jin a little bit, because he views Jin as someone who has basically kind of like taken away his potential in a
Yeah.
way. Like he talks about like when like kind of in your first couple times of introducing Ryuzo, he talks about how like him and Jin had been in a tournament or competition
Yeah.
together, and Jin had beaten him, and so Ryuzo like lost out on this opportunity to serve like a higher lord.
Right.
And so
Become a samurai himself, in other words.
exactly, yeah, so he becomes a Ronin and becomes the leader of the Straw Hat Ronin
Mm-hmm.
because of Jin besting him.
Yeah.
So he has this chip on his shoulder, and that chip ultimately leads him, to accepting the Khan's offer, because the Khan offers multiple people throughout the story to work for him.
Yeah.
And Ryuzo is like one of the only people to do it.
Right.
And he does it for the reason to protect like his group, And but like you find out just like instantly that even though he's doing that, like he's not into it.
Yeah.
He doesn't just become a villain.
Mm-hmm.
There's a scene where the Khan is like torturing people,
Mm-hmm.
and he tries to make Ryuzo do it.
Yeah.
You can just see that Ryuzo is like
Just
he
hates it,
can't
yeah.
he can't bring himself to do it.
Yeah. So he does it to one person. He burns And he's like, "Open the gates!" He's demanding that the town or the fort that they're trying to enter do that. So yeah. Anyway.
And so when you because you get to fight Ryuzo twice.
Yeah.
The first time, and both of them, like the boss fights and duels in that game are so
fun.
good.
Yeah.
And like you just feel like so much weight to them. Like the combat system really doesn't change in these fights, but the focus becomes so much more clear.
Yeah.
That I don't know, that it just makes those fights feel so incredibly powerful.
And they're a little more difficult, of course, than
absolutely
your typical fighting, and you're really relying on being able to break defenses and being able to pierce through what you need to in order to survive. Sorry, I'm distracted by Johan just attacking Jason here. So much for the purring baby.
Exactly. He was so good a couple of minutes ago, but now he has reverted back to holy terror.
Yeah. So
I will use a spray bottle, Johan.
We'll do what we have to. I know it's controversial to use a spray bottle on cats, but the thing is, he attacks my feet and causes me to bleed. It's something that he needs to stop somehow.
Yeah, so. Exactly. All right, setting you back down, little fella.
Yeah, but
you completely ruined my chain of thought there, Johan.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with like Ryuzo, the first time you get to fight him, it's another one of those fights where it's like, I mean, you win the fight, but Ryuzo, like he just runs,
Yeah.
And ouch. But then the second time, the second time, which is it's around that same time where Jin is uses the poison on that Mongol camp. So like you get to see both like Jin fully embracing this new thinking and also like, killing one of his oldest friends and rivals.
Yeah.
And so like you were saying with the whole thing with Shimura, Nobu, and Ryuzo, just like at that point of the story, like the hits just keep coming.
Yeah.
And it's just such a heavy toll that it takes on you.
And what I really liked about that second fight is that Ryuzo offers a way out for himself, where he says, "You can say that I was your man on the inside; they'll believe you," But of course, Jin's like, "I'm not having none of that," and pulls out the blade, and it's a little sad and it's cool,
Exactly.
It was an interesting moment in the story for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, you're given that choice, with Shimura.
Yeah.
Like to spare or kill. And it's cool that you're given the choice for him, and not for Ryuzo.
Yeah. And it would affect a lot of the game if Ryuzo was still alive, that'd probably be too much to program in,
Absolutely.
if you wanted to.
No, that would
maybe
be difficult.
Not, but I don't really know anything about programming, as we all know, so.
Right. But still, it would make the whole process
more difficult.
That much more difficult.
Yeah, the split choice early on, but
yeah, when you are able to go into that next portion of the game, like it's like the whole thing where Shimura, that same scene that you were describing earlier with him like burning the adoption papers, like everything leading up to that, Shimura is like, when he says he's going to communicate with the Emperor to get reinforcements. And then he reveals to you, it's like, you know what? In addition, I've also asked for his approval to like formally make you my son, which is the thing that Jin has been wanting like his whole life. And then at the moment where like that big portion of the game where it's like, you kill Ryuzo and the papers are burned because of what Jin does, like that, you get that moment where Jin like, you know, says that he's not your son, he is the ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do wish that there was a better name
Oh, yeah.
than that. And there is one very silly and stupid reason for that I need to share with you.
Oh, no. Am I going to be ruined? Is the audience going to be ruined against Ghost of Tsushima?
I don't think so.
No, go ahead. I'm just kidding.
There is this movie that Techie and I watched called Memoirs of an International Assassin.
Okay.
And it's a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a writer who has come up with this, like, he's written this story about an international assassin.
Yeah.
And he got the ideas from this story from this guy that he's been talking to. And his editor, like, when he submits the book, his editor changes the title to call it True Memoirs. So everyone thinks that the writer has actually is actually an international assassin, and it inspires this group of people to be like, this is the guy that killed some and so he gets swept up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so there's an early portion in the movie where it depicts the writer going through this kind of stereotypical action set piece.
Okay.
And he beats up all the goons, gets the girl, and she is getting ready to thank him, and he puts his finger over her mouth and he's like, shh, call me the ghost. And so near the end of the movie, the writer does that to the girl, and she's like, did you just fucking shush me? And so every time I was playing Ghost of Tsushima and people were like, this is the ghost, I'm like, no. So that scene, while extremely heavy and awesome, when he's like, I am the ghost, I just imagined him putting his finger over Lord Shimura's mouth going, shh, call me the ghost.
That's hilarious.
I know. But yeah, it's so that's something that I carried with me throughout the course of my playthrough.
Yeah. It's interesting, that, and I like that Yuna just invents the story early on.
Yeah.
And I'll come back to that in a second. A thought I just had, but anyway, I apparently I needed to tell you that I had a second thought.
I'm ready for it.
For once in my life,
I had more than one thought at the same time.
But just if they went with too badass of a name, it would have been really corny after a while. If he was the Spectre or the Slayer of Tsushima or something like that.
Right. Fucking Slayer.
If he's the ghost, it's a little more mild.
Yes, that's true.
Slightly more, but
right, yeah. My reason for is very silly, and I feel somewhat unique to me.
Right.
It's nothing against the name of otherwise I think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because of that.
Yeah.
Just made it very silly for me, and at times.
Mm-hmm. But one thing that I'm glad that the game did not have is a romance story.
Yeah.
Especially because Yuna is a female, and
right,
Jin and Yuna were friends, and it was pretty cool that they became closer and closer as the story went on.
Yep.
And but the story wasn't about some romance that
right,
and it was always for Jin. It was always about putting the citizens of Tsushima first.
Yeah.
And he never put a single person above that, including his own self or his uncle,
Exactly.
But, and it would have been too much, especially if Yuna was I don't know, just a total babe.
Right.
And I nursed you back to health and also check me out.
Right.
And,
Yeah, no, she was a very real character. I'm glad you mentioned the romance thing, because that's something that I was going to bring up too. Mm-hmm. Jin and Yuna's relationship and friendship throughout the course of the game felt very real.
Yeah.
I think it's I want to say it's before kind of the culmination of the second act, where Jin and Yuna they share that drink together.
Yeah.
At the top of that watchtower. They're just they're getting drunk together and having fun.
Right.
And it's one of the very few like really genuinely light-hearted moments
Mm-hmm.
throughout the course of the game. And I don't know, like I am really glad that there wasn't a tacked on romantic subplot, because you're right, it would not have fit.
Right.
You know, and even, you know, when like after the credits roll and you kind of enter like the post game, you know, you're able to talk and communicate with Yuna, but it's like, even though Khoten Khan is defeated, like there's still more to do. So like you don't get this opportunity to say like, well, how about we have another drink together?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. It just, yeah, it just made like their dynamic feel so good, especially because she is the character that inspires so much change in Jin.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's just incredibly satisfying.
You know, it really makes me think, like, first it was Shimura and then it was Yuna.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is Jin just that malleable that he just, like, whoever he runs into, you know what you should do, is what I'm thinking. You're right. It's the only way.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. That is a problem that you encounter in, like, you know, other games where, like, your main character is kind of a non-character.
Yeah.
But, you know, with Lord Shimura and Jin, you understand, like, Jin's reverence of him. Because you get, like, these flashbacks to Jin as a kid.
Yeah.
And, like, you get to learn about why they view things this way.
No.
And then with Yuna, you have an entire game to build upon that relationship. So it feels like both of, like, those reasonings feel natural. And I love that throughout the second act, Yuna and Shimura are basically in conflict for which way Jin goes.
Yeah.
You know? Like, he will frequently say, like he Shimura doesn't even like having Yuna around.
Right.
You know, he basically just views her as, like, this urchin who has been poisoning Jin.
Right.
Maybe not that
Literally,
kind of poison,
yeah.
but, you know, like, he's just, I don't know, she's, like, turning him against him, you know? But Yuna is just like, you know, like, I want to have our home back.
Yeah.
You know, and I acknowledge that the samurai's way is not what's going to do it. And so there he goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for them to have a few scenes and chapters together, you know, where that comes into direct conflict is fantastic. Choice. Yeah. I wish that I wish that you would maybe get an opportunity like that where you get to see, like, Lady Moscow and Sensei Ishikawa doing the same thing, because these are two people that, you know, really thought the world of Lord Shimura also. But, like, they basically kind of follow Jin in the shadows throughout the course of the game.
Yeah.
Like I would think that, you know, there could at least maybe be some conversations or context as to, like, why is Ishikawa following Jin instead of Shimura now?
Yeah. That was interesting. I'm trying to remember, like, when you talk to him at the beginning of chapter 3, why he tells you that he's following you, and but I can't even remember, so it must not have been a good reason.
Exactly.
Do you have any more you would like to add about this game? If not, I've got a final question for you.
I am ready for your final question.
What do you give Ghost of Tsushima out of 5?
Out of 5? 4.5.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's, like, it's a phenomenal game. A really great and unique experience among open world games. And it's like, it feels nitpicky, but I just, for whatever reason, I can't feel like I can give it a perfect score. You know? I don't know what it's missing that would give that to me.
Yeah.
Maybe fishing. But
there is fishing in the game. You just can't be the one to fish.
exactly,
You see all the Mongols and like the villagers and fish, all
right.
that.
But like I don't know. I just feel like there was something that just stops it from being a
perfect game.
Maybe it's just like my own just real sense of super personal involvement with the characters. Like I love the story and I really enjoy what they did. I just like the characters to themselves just didn't really
pop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess maybe that's all that there is to it. How about you?
I was thinking 4.25.
Yeah.
Which is poor Johan. Poor Johan. All he wants to do is harm people. And ruin recordings. But no, it's like in terms of why can't I give it a higher score, I feel like just the sort of iffy fill it out quality of the side quests, just like they were pretty solid, but not extremely solid, I guess. And so there's a little bit of fat that could have cut off the steak there, I guess. But
exactly, and it's like that's a thing with just so many open world games where it's just like, they need to pad it out with something,
right? And pad it out is what they did, because
not to the extent that like some other open world games will do. I feel like they did a much better job of it, but it's still like you can't get away from the fact that there is just some definite filler.
Right. And I don't know how they would improve the stealth mechanic. I guess I'm not enough of a game designer to come up with the ultimate stealth gameplay, but like there's something about it that just doesn't quite work,
Yeah, it doesn't, like we were saying earlier, it doesn't hit the same highs that the combat is able to.
Yeah. So that being said, I think we both liked Ghost of Tsushima.
We liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the future, we are going to do more kind of like more in-depth looks at games that both of us have played. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know that kind of the order of the day is that Jeff and I try to find like that interconnecting thread between the games that we're both playing, because we have fairly different things that we usually go for in a game. But like in the case of Ghost of Tsushima, there are games that show up that both of us play, and that gives us a bigger conversation to have about it, which just makes these kind of episodes I don't know, very fun to look forward to, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm glad you guys gave it a listen, and I had a good time.
As did I.
Yeah. Oh, you should have killed Shimura.
I don't know, man. I stand by the choice that I made.
Was Shimura mad when you said you wouldn't kill him?
Not mad, but disappointed. It's just like this whole kind of thing where it's just like, if he was kind of mad, I think he kind of like he just wasn't able to do anything about it. Like he was just like so downed, like he just couldn't do a damned thing about it.
Okay, so you didn't have like a lecture or anything like that?
Not really.
When Jin did kill Shimura, he said the same things I was thinking, before he pulled out the old Tonto and finished the job, it was like he's like, I'll make sure, he's like, I'll take care of stuff, I'll make sure that you're not forgotten and that you're remembered in a good light. And it's like, yeah, man,
that's cool.
You didn't do it out of like bloodlust or anything like that, which is, and bloodlust. They do talk about that a couple of times in the game. Like, it seems like you enjoy this too much, like actual killing part of it, and which is kind of funny considering that we are playing this to enjoy the murder.
It is an entertainment thing.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that's all we got to say about.
Yeah. I'm sure
Tsushima.
most likely we will realize something that we forgot to mention, but that's par for the course.
Yep.
So,
All right. Thanks for listening, you guys.
Yeah, until next time, we hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful weeks, and yeah, we shall see you with the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.